less than 40% have had any kind of a RMA or FMA or any kind of a professional valuation done ever. Let alone if we would ask in the last year or two, who has had an RMA, a real market analysis done, the answer would have been probably less than 10%.
Welcome to a brand new episode of the M&A Mastermind podcast presented by Cornerstone International Alliance. I am your host, Nick Olson. On this show, I get the opportunity to talk with the brightest minds in lower middle market M&A. Together, we discuss industry intelligence, deal management, shared successes, specialized expertise, and much more. If you serve the small to medium-sized business owner, this show will offer you tactics and insights you can use and implement now to become a master in M&A. Hey, everybody. Welcome to a brand new episode of the M&A Mastermind podcast. My guest, I believe this is his third time on the show. Must be a pretty good guest if that's the case. But Scott Bushkie, he's the managing partner and founder of Cornerstone Business Services, the founder of Cornerstone International Alliance. He is a best-selling author, a sought-after keynote speaker, and is very on the cutting edge of research in this industry, which is what we're diving into here today. I know he loves coaching his kids in basketball and seeing them succeed at all the things that they do, and very much an innovator in our industry, a very sought after person to talk to. So Scott Bushkie is my guest today. Scott, welcome to the show. How you doing?
Thank you, Nick. Doing well.
Awesome. Well, so we're talking about, trying to get into inside the minds of sellers and what owners are really thinking about right now when selling their business. Now, you developed this survey, and it's really pretty telling as to what the business owner is thinking right now. But tell us about the survey. Why did you create this, and what are we going to talk about here today to get out of it?
Yeah, Nick, absolutely. So I've always been, doing this for 27 years, thinking of why do business owners sell? Why don't they sell? What's in their head? What are they thinking? And it's always, hard to really peel that onion back enough with owners, because sometimes they're more protective or close to the vest of what their true emotions are. So I thought, Exit Planning Institute, EPI, puts out a really good survey. They've done it in 2013, again in 2023, on the exit readiness of how ready they are for an exit. But no one's really, that I've seen, has put anything out about, again, getting into the mindset of the business owner around selling their business. So that's what we really wanted to do. So we know we're not experts on doing surveys and research. We hired a professional firm to do a third-party research program. And so what we set up to do was really understand, how do they think? Why do they think? Why would they go to market? Why wouldn't they? Who are their trusted advisors? What do they think of them? What do they expect from them? And all kinds of other questions. So it was really demystifying some things. It was really some shocking findings, which we may or may not get into today, but there's a white paper that people can download to really get more of the details. But the study was 750 business owners all over the U.S. It was pretty much broken in between male and female. It was based off the 2020 U.S. Census. So it's accurately, statistically correct to the U.S. 2020 Census. You had to be between 45 and 75 to get into the program. And we wanted companies with at least 5 million in revenue, because that's usually where we start at 5 million or above. So there was about, as you can see here, 26% was in 5 to 10 million, 25% were 10 to 25 million in annual revenue, 25 to 50 million had 26%, and over 50 to 100 million were 23%. So roughly about 25% between 5 to 10, 10 to 25, 25 to 50, 50 to 100 million in revenue. And so that was the data sample that we went after, had this third party come after. And that's what we really wanted to do, because that's really a lot of our target market, are companies in those sizes of 1 to 25 million of EBITDA, or 5 to 250 million in revenue. But a lot of them are in that 5 to 100 million dollar revenue, because they're just so underserved in that marketplace. So we just have more. The smaller you get, the more clients and more business owners there are. So that's where we spend a lot of our time.
Yeah, that's a great context for our discussion here today. And I've heard you speak on this a lot with business owners, with referral sources, and I think it gives you a lot of legitimacy to what we're seeing out there, but also as to how we can better connect with these business owners, because getting into what they're thinking obviously is very, very helpful. Is there any is there one thing about this whole survey real quick that just jumps out at you, like, wow, this stat was really amazing, I would have never guessed that?
One thing that I did think was interesting because we asked them, how did they get into business for themselves? And it was one of four ways. It was either they founded it or started it, they inherited it from their family, they bought it from their boss or the employer, or they bought a third party company. Obviously we thought selling companies to third parties, we thought that would be not the biggest, but a fairly good chunk of these companies. 76% were founded, 16% were inherited, 5% were bought by their boss, bought from their boss. Only 3% were actually had gone through the diligence process and done all the due diligence and bought a company. And I think that's interesting because when you see people, going through this process of why, and that's why we wanted to dive into this, because we see these business owners are so smart and they're so driven and they know how to start a company or grow a company and build things up, but they're only going to exit that company once. And most only exit, especially baby boomers, only exit their company once in their life. And so for 76% that founded it, they've never been through anything even close to that. So they just have no idea what's coming out on the other end. And that's really what we wanted to dive in is why is, you hear all the pundits say that the national average is 20 to 30%. And as the deals get bigger in the 50 million and above, the percentages go up. Still, anything near 20, 30 million is just, or 20 to 30% is just crazy. I mean, think if our kids came home with a test score of 30% and we'd be like, what in the heck happened? Did you study at all? Did you sleep for the last 3 weeks in class? But yet that's what we accept as business owners. And what we found is the traits that really make business owners so good at what they do, this drive, this grit, this percent, like, I can figure this out, I'll do it myself, this complex thinking, the pivot or the trial and error, all of those things that make them great business owners to build and grow a company really make them bad business sellers because they try to do it themselves and they go, I know this business better than anybody else. I know the industry. I've been in it for 40 years. Why can't I do this? And it's just a completely different process of trying to give your baby up for adoption is what most of our clients kind of liken it to. And they're just not prepared. They're not even close to prepared. And you got these private equity groups, family offices, corporations out there with specialized, deal teams that come in, know all the tricks of the trade, know what to say to clients and pump up their ego, get them to like them, and then give them a really low ball offer and try to get a deal done. So those were just some of the things that we found that were pretty interesting.
Yeah. I know there's a stat in there too about, what is the current mindset of a business owner around selling their business? Like when do they plan on leaving?
Yeah.
I thought this was interesting.
This one was also one that really surprised me. So we had the number one answer when, what's your mindset around, exiting or selling your business? And the number one answer was, I'm going to leave my business when I'm physically and or mentally unable to continue. I'm physically and or mentally able to continue. That's when I'm finally going to get out. And that's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, think about this. This is the largest asset, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And they're going to have to get dragged out of that business or go out, horizontal, not vertical, and not enjoy life at all because they just don't know what they don't know. 32% said they didn't even know where to start or who to trust. About half the people said, if I tell anybody, I'm afraid my employees will find out. If they find out, they'll all leave and quit, and I won't have a business. I mean, there were so many things that set them up for failure of what their mindset was, and that's what we're trying to demystify or try to educate business owners and their trusted advisors on with this.
And another interesting talking point was you talk about selling and ready to sell, and I know you talk to a lot about this with financial advisors as well as making sure they understand the true value of their company. I know you asked a question. How many of you have actually done a formal valuation or a fair market analysis, which we now call a real market analysis? And how many have had one of those done professionally?
Yeah, and the question was, has ever have one done? Not in the last year, but ever in their 20, 30, 40-year business career. And the answer was less than 40% have had any kind of a RMA or FMA or any kind of a professional valuation done ever. Let alone if we would ask in the last year or two who's had an RMA, a real market analysis done, the answer would have been probably less than 10%. Yet this is their single largest financial transaction or largest asset of their life that they get one chance to exit. So it's no wonder why all these buyers are trying to call spending all this time, energy, and money to call these sellers, because they know if they can get to this business owner before the business owner gets to someone like us at Cornerstone that's going to represent them, they know they're going to get a better deal. They can tell them what they want to hear. They can, again, most of them have started this thing. They bird this up out of nothing. So if you start hearing, your kid's really smart. Boy, they're a good looking kid. Boy, they're a great athlete. Boy, whatever. It's like, oh, geez, thank you. It's like, wow, it's validating the parent that they were. It's validating that they're a good business owner, that they created something of value, but yet most of them don't have no clue what the value is. So when they come in with a lowball offer, 55% said, yeah, I'd probably accept that without checking. 55% said they would accept an unsolicited offer if they assumed it was reasonable. Yet over 60% don't have a clue of what the business is worth. And in fact, we just did a deal. We just closed 2 weeks ago where a company, very nice company out west, was working with a private equity firm. And again, it's the buyer's job to do two things: get the company at the lowest possible price and put as much risk on the seller as possible. If the transition doesn't work out like they thought, the seller takes a hit in an earn out or something like that. It's not where, geez, let me pay the most money because I just think that Nick's a nice guy and I want to pay you all cash at close no matter what. That's their job. Now, many do it ethically. Some don't do it ethically, but that is their job. So we had a client, they were working with a private equity firm, and they had worked from like 5 or 6 million up to 10 million. But the whole 5 million and above was all earnout. And it was a pretty aggressive earnout. The owner's like, I don't think I'm going to hit this earnout. I don't feel very good about it. But that's the way that they negotiated. Like, well, we can give you a little bit more, but they just kept more risk on the seller. So if it turned out to be a home run, hey, the seller got paid and the buyer was in a really good position. But if it was just average, the seller was going to get $5 or $6 million for their company. Their financial advisor saw me speak at a conference and called us up at the end of the conference and said, hey, I'd love you to talk with my client. They're negotiating with someone right now. They haven't signed anything yet, but they're really close. And they almost signed the letter of intent, but because they had said, hey, this is the highest value we can go. We can't go $1 more. You've got us from 5 million or 6 million all the way up to 10. That's it. If you don't like it, we're sorry, we're gonna have to walk. So we talked with them. It's like, 10 million we think is in the ballpark of what we call market, doing the RMA or FMA. But we think we can get you a lot more cash at close. We think most of our clients get anywhere between 80 to 90% cash at close. Some 100%, but most are in that 80, 85, 90%. She's like, well, that would be great because, now I could get, several more millions of dollars at close. And I said, we're going to bring you multiple offers. This whole POMO, the power multiple offers, it just allows these business owners, it's what we're really good at. It allows these business owners to not only get more value, better structure, but also that peace of mind that they get to leave. She said, all right, they said, all right, we're going to work with you guys. So they said, what should we do with this buyer we're talking to you? I said, well, send them an email just saying that, hey, you're very serious. You're going to sell. You want to do this right. So you're working with Cornerstone. They're going to help you, take you through a process. Then 5 minutes of that email coming in, her phone rang. And as soon as she said hello, it was the buyer. They said, what's it going to take for you not to sign with Cornerstone? Like, how much more money do you need to not go through a process? After they just said, we can't pay anymore. So that's kind of what, just one example of what's out there in the marketplace, and that these people are accepting these things all day long. It's unbelievable. And that's, again, why the returns are so good for private equity, because they know how to buy low and obviously sell high.
So that leads me to another question. I think in part of the survey, you talk about the exit, the exit options that business owners have. And obviously, one-on-one negotiation with the private equity groups, unsolicited offer, that's one of them. But, why, you as an M&A advisor, you as a firm that are educating these business owners, why is it important for them to know all the options that they have?
Yeah, there was a book out by Bo Burlingham called Finish Big, and there's others out there, but the studies show that so many people sell their business and then have regret. Like 75% have regret after they sell their company. It usually comes down to three things. One is they did an unsolicited offer and find out they left a ton of money on the table and are sick to their stomach. Number two is they sell their company and they have no idea what they're going to do next. And they're bored stiff and like, oh my gosh, why did I give up the lifestyle I had? Even though I was burnt out, tired, I want to do something different. I have no idea what to hear. All my identity and who I am is all tied up in this business that now I don't own. And the last one is that they sell, and they sell for the wrong reasons. They think about just cash, and they don't think about all the other pieces of the puzzle. That, do I want my legacy? Do I want the name to continue? Do I want to protect my employees? Do I want to have the culture stay the same? Do I want to stick around for 6 months or a year? Do I want to stick around for 5 years and roll some equity? All of those things go into what a good deal looks like, and there's no right or wrong answers. But that's what we try to do, is help them make sure that they don't have regrets at the end of the day. So we have exercises and processes and systems in place to make sure we cover those three and many more. So the option of, geez, I thought I was just going to have to give it to my kids or sell it to my competitor on the street, those might be the absolute worst two options out there. There's so many other options, and if they don't take time to educate themselves, they'll never know until it's too late. And they go, oh shoot, I didn't know that I could have sold to a private equity group, rolled some equity, given it to my kids, granted to my kids or my employees in a tax deferred way, got 80% of my cash or 75% of my cash out, gave my kids or my management team some meaningful equity, and I get to exit in 6 months to a year, versus giving it to my kids or my employees now and getting paid out of 7 to 10 years and praying to God that they make the payments and the company stays up and everything else. I've actually had business owners who were more stressed living in Florida, trying to live their golden years because their kids were running the company, and they were just hoping that they didn't screw it up and were making the payments, than if they just were up here running the company themselves, because at least then they knew the company was in good hands and it was doing well and everything else. So it really does just take a little bit of education, a little bit of time to understand what are all your options, because most people know one or two, maybe three, and there's 9 or 10, and then there's blends of all those 9 or 10 of how you could do that to really go what makes the most sense for you and what's the best fit. Like I said, we have an exercise just for that of what's important to them, and 10 different kind of options that they can rank 1 through 10 to see what really kind of floats to the top.
What percentage of business owners actually know all their exit options? I thought this was interesting.
It's very, very little. Just even adequate was like around 50%, and nobody was good, and most were poor. So that means that 50-60% might have some ideas, but we didn't say 9 options. We just said, do you know all your options? And 57% said, oh, I think I have some adequate knowledge. But again, you get one chance to do this well. So it's just sitting down, either reading my book Finish Strong, which has the pros and cons of each option in there, or just having a conversation with an investment bank like Cornerstone or someone else within the CIA Alliance, the Cornerstone Alliance, to say, what are all my options? What makes sense? This is what's important to me. Different buyers have different playbooks, and that's where a CIA member partner can really help that business owner understand not only what the value is, but what the different options are and what the likelihoods are of those different options.
When are business owners looking to sell? Is it 1 year, 10 years, 20 years in between? Like, how many businesses are going to be coming on the market? Do you think in the near future?
Yeah, that was one of the other really eye-opening findings that we got from this national study. Is the ones that I've seen going back as long as I can remember were like 45 to 50% we're going to sell in 5 years, and roughly 75% in 10 years. That's kind of been since the early 2000s. That's what I've seen. This study that came out now with the youngest baby boomer being around 61, I think, and the oldest being right around 80, plus or minus a couple months. 8% wanted to sell in 3 years, not 5. 48% in 3 years. And this study was done in January of 2025, just for reference point, and 64% in 5 years. And with all the 9 million baby boomers, business owners that are out there, I mean, think about that. I mean, the numbers are truly staggering. Of all the business owners out there and how many boomers. The one of the largest percentage of boomers are right in that 62 to 66 range right now. So it would make sense that a lot of them are at this retirement age. Again, depending on what economists you talk to, and there's all kinds out there with all kinds of opinions. I think there are several that are stating that kind of around that 2029, 2030, 2030, 2031, just with Social Security and people's ages and everything else, there could be, a really big recession or almost depression type of thing. So I think a lot of people are going, I want to get out before then, take my money, be able to divest it and be able to control my life and live through those maybe not so good years, which, who knows. But we do think that, I've said this for about 6 months ago, I started seeing it that, we had 2021 it was funny because in 2020, we were like, oh man, with COVID, we didn't know what was going to happen. And by June, July, things started bouncing back pretty quick. Everybody sitting at home. I guess a lot of people wanted to do deals because that second half of the year was really good. 2021 was probably the best year I've seen in my 27 years. And then it was strong in early 22 until interest rates started going up in, I think, March or April of 22. And then things really hit the skids a little bit. Deals were still getting done. There's still a ton of money out there, still a bunch of buyers, but the volume of deals came down. And we saw that through 23, 24. And in the first half of 25, we saw the election last year was so polarizing that for 6 months, people kind of said, well, I don't want to sell right now because I don't know who's going to be, the president in November. And then they're like, well, okay, Trump won, good, for most. But now it's already November. Let's wait till I get my year-end numbers down. So there was a big, kind of talking to a lot of people, but nobody signing up, nobody coming to market in the second half of last year. So we knew the first half of this year was going to be light, but now the volume of deal flow that we have, the number of new sellers that we're signing up every week now versus months, what we're seeing, talking to our Cornerstone International Alliance partners around the country and around the world, at least in the United States, we predict that 2026 is going to be maybe the best year, better than 21. It could be really that good, and again, God knows what else could, get thrown out there, but people are so desensitized now to tariffs and wars and everything else. It's like, what else could hit them that really knock them off? And interest rates continue to come down a little bit, which just continues to throw some fuel on the fire. So we think 26 is, if you're looking to sell, 26 could be a heck of a year to make those moves, because again, there's a lot of money out there, more than ever, I believe, again, as they continue to raise money and balance sheets are strong on the corporate side, and just limited deal flow. So what we see is law of supply and demand. If there's a lot of buyers and a lot of money and less sellers, the sellers have the advantage, and that's what we're seeing. And that's what we call this POMO, the power of multiple offers, where we averaged in 2024, we normally average about 4 to 5 offers per client the last couple of years. 2024, we had 10 offers per client. And right now in 25, we have 9 offers per client, which again, as you would assume, the more offers, the higher the value you can drive up, the better deal terms you can get. And it just gives the seller so much more leverage to get what they want in a transaction. So we think it's going to be a good year for, to be a seller.
This episode of the M&A Mastermind podcast is powered by Cornerstone International Alliance, where leading M&A firms come together. As part of this international network, you get access to global opportunities, over 200 M&A experts, enhanced collaboration and knowledge sharing, and some of the best M&A tools and resources available, all to help you take your firm to the next level. Ready to join this exclusive network? Visit cornerstoneia.com/new member today. The opposite of POMO and power of multiple offers is a business owner trying to sell it on their own. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, 55% said they would, which again, they don't know what they don't know. Like you said, a third basically said they don't know where to start. And what we've seen, just to give you an idea, on the last 3 deals, I just spoke at a conference 2 weeks ago, and they asked us, in the last 3 deals that you did, that there was an unsolicited offer in writing versus what you ended up getting running a process with POMO, what was the difference? Because people go, well, if it's 4 or 5% and I got to pay you, I'm going to net out the same, so I might as well just do the deal myself. The difference between the unsolicited offers and the 3 deals that we did was 73%. 73%. In fact, in one deal, the last one I worked on, they had 2 buyers at the table. They talked to us about, hey, we've got 2 interested buyers. They're the market leader in their area. We would love to bring more buyers together and really create POMO. And we said, great. That was on a Friday. But by Sunday at noon, they had talked themselves in that they're really smart, which they were. They're brilliant people, and they know the industry better than most. They've been in it for 40 years. They know all the players. They got the 2 top buyers at the table already saying, I want to buy your business. Why do we need Cornerstone? And I said, well, I can't make you work with us. It's your calls. They said, we still want you to do an RMA. We still want you to tell us what we think market is, the real market value. I think because they wanted to show that they could get an offer more than what I thought market was. And so it takes us about 2 to 3 weeks, about 3 weeks to do an RMA. We expedited this one. So the next week, the first offer comes in, $31 million with a $5 million earnout that they said was pretty aggressive that they might not get. We came in the next week, about 4 or 5 days later, with our RMA at $43.3 million. So quite a bit above the $31 million that they were going to get on the other deal. And which was $5 million, which was $26 million at close, 5 in a seller note, and then that 5 in an earnout to get potentially up to 36. So they're going to get 26 at close. And we can't just come in with a number and say 43 and then bring in offers at 20, at 30. We'd look like idiots. So we've got to make sure that's real, which that's what we do. We spend a lot of time on these things with real people, spending 3 weeks researching the industry, deals done, all kinds of different what's really going on in the marketplace with industry experts and everything else. So we came in at 43.3. They said, yeah, but that was the second biggest buyer. We've got the biggest buyer now at the table. They've come to our offices twice. They've taken us for 2 amazing dinners. They talked about all the synergies we have between our 2 companies, how great we are, how smart I am, how great my management team is, how great of a process we put in place, and how great we're all going to work together. Their offer came in at $25 million. All cash at close, though, but $25 million. So I said, can we please run our process? Can we create POMO? We're creating urgency and scarcity and creating competitive nature because, again, both of those buyers were working directly with the owner. And they had no reason to pay any more than they thought they could get away with. So we ran our process, our Assurance 360 process, created POMO, created urgency and scarcity. And in 10 days, we had a signed letter of intent for $51.3 million. More than double what the largest, most synergistic company with the most money wanted to pay. Now, if we would have got them in that process, who knows what they would have paid. But that's what we only could bring other buyers to the table. So we closed in 45 days, which is extremely fast. We closed in 45 days, right before the new year, December 31st, and they got $51.3 million versus getting 25 at close or 26 at close. And the funny thing is that same buyer came to them about 9 months earlier and said, hey, we're kind of adjacent. There's a lot of synergies between the two. We'd like to buy you or at least look at buying your company. And they said, well, we're thinking about selling. They were getting up there. They were getting a little burnt out and they wanted to retire. And so they put together an offer and they said, look, we like you guys. We think you're very valuable, but we have a written mandate with our client, with our private equity group that's backing us, that gives us the money to go buy these companies. And we can't pay more than a 5 multiple. It's just the market was 4 to 5. Like we can't pay more than a 5. And in 10 days, I had them paying an 8.25 multiple because they knew the competition of how these big companies were going to come in. Instead of owning this huge market share, they were going to, be somebody they're going to be chomping away at their back door at their headquarters day after day. They just didn't want to put up that fight. They wanted to continue to grow and grow and grow and continue to be that market leader in their region. So it's that kind of stuff that opposite of POMO, the buyer controls the process. The buyer controls the value. The buyer controls the timing. The buyer controls the questions they're going to ask and how long it's going to go out. Oh, Mick, we'll close quick, 30, 45 days, no problem. 6, 9, 12 months later, you still haven't closed for one reason or another. And they're just trying to burn you out, and get you tired or have the company tank a little bit in some cases. And that's like, I told you I'd pay a 5 multiple or an 8 multiple, but it's not 4 million EBITDA anymore. Now it's 3.2. We can close next week, but you're taking X millions of dollars off the table. It's like, if you want to have that peace of mind, if you want to be able to control the timing and the process and truly know that you didn't leave any money on the table and you get to choose who's the best fit, many times they take the second or even third highest offer. It's not always about the highest offer for our clients. It might be a better fit. They might like them better, culture fit, whatever it might be. We don't care. We just want to give them that peace of mind that only POMO can bring them because they know they've told the right story to the right group of buyers with no asking price, and you get all the offers at once. Not one today, one 3 months from now, one 6 months from now, or 30 days, whatever it is, they all come in at one time. That's the fun part about our business. That's really what people pay us for.
Yeah. What would you tell a business owner who, we talked about a little bit about the unsolicited offer before and you kind of ran in that story, but what advice would you give a business owner if they received an unsolicited offer, and what would the next steps be?
Yeah, very simply, give Cornerstone a call or one of the Alliance members a call, depending on where you're located, the industry, and sit down with that RMA. Just have a conversation. It's all confidential. There's no cost. There's no obligation. Take 60, 90 minutes. Understand what your options are, what the buyer is. But that RMA, we can do that. And it takes, like I said, 3 weeks. We can expedite it in some certain situations if we need to. But it helps you understand what market is. Trust me, if they're there, they're not going anywhere. Because they know they've got a kind of a line on the hook, a fish on the hook, and they're not going anywhere. They want to reel you in and bring you in. So, and to back that up, because they'll threaten to leave, hey, if you got to make a decision, otherwise we're moving on. In 5 years, we've run a process against those unsolicited offers, and they've always threatened to leave. Not once has a buyer ever left. Now, they could, but then were they really there real in the beginning? But typically, because they know if they accept your lowball offer, we'll stick around through this process because maybe you'll run a crappy process and you won't bring any good offers in. But that's not how, CI works. We're some of the best money firms in the lower middle market around the world and bring very good, run a very good competitive process. But that's really what it's all about.
So as you're talking to the business owner during this process, maybe they received an unsolicited offer, maybe they're just thinking about selling or what their options might be. In your experience and what the survey says, what are some of the top motivators for business owners, to actually sell their company?
Yeah, the number one motivator is when they know they can live their ideal lifestyle, when they know that they have financial freedom. That's what we call it the real number. You got to understand what your number is. Then what's the net number? Because who cares? Let's just say small numbers. It's $10 million. Who cares? What am I going to net out of this thing? If I got $9 million in debt and $1 million in fees, I'm getting zero. Probably not the right time to sell my company unless I got to get out for some unexplainable reasons. But if I get net $6 million, but now with your tax folks, your CPA, your tax attorney, maybe because you started earlier, the two biggest things you can do to help you sell your business at a maximum value is start planning sooner and build a team of specialists around you. And by building that team of specialists, now it's maybe instead of 6 million, hey, we got a year or two, we can do A and B, and now it's worth. Now we can net out $6.5 million. Well, they just saved you $500,000 of taxes you were gonna have to pay Uncle Sam. But now that it's $6.5 million, you still got to go and figure out what's we call it the lifestyle number, or SEPA world, what's that wealth gap? And going, well, if my lifestyle number is 8, and my net number is 6.5, I've got two choices. I either lower my lifestyle to 6.5 because I'm tired, burnt out, sick, or just can't do it anymore, no energy in the tank. Or I go, nope, I see that I'm at 6.5. I need to get to 8. I got $1.5 million, wealth gap. And then you go up and you work with a business coach to help close that gap. And some people try to do it themselves. Our experience has been they'll kind of do it for about 3-4 weeks, and then they go back to what they've done for 20, 30, 40 years. And they come to us a year later and the value's no more, sometimes less. And they go, oh my gosh, I just frustrated as heck because I just wasted a year of my life. But getting a coach, they can come in, we've got a lot of different coaches that we see out there that we could recommend that are really good. And come in, help you get there sooner, better, faster. And then we'll come back and do that, update that real market analysis until the numbers make sense. But that's really the biggest thing. If you got, as long as you have not signed the letter of intent as a business owner, once it's signed, there's nothing we can really do. You're tied up in, unless you blow up the deal, you're tied up in exclusivity and we can't do much. But I don't care if you literally have it ready to sign, but you have not signed it. We can come in, we have a no-cost conversation. Again, everything's confidential. We can kind of take a look high level, see what we think market is, or do an RMA and really understand what market is. And then you can start making better informed decisions. And by chance, hey, if we think it's 10 and they're at 12, hey, that might be a great offer. Take it and run with it. Our experience in 5 years, that's never, ever been the case. Not ever has the buyer left. And not one time in 5 years that we've run a process against an unsolicited offer has the seller ever chosen the original buyer. 100% of the time, we've been able to get a higher value, better structure, better cultural fit, protecting employees, or all of the above for our clients by running a process. Again, going back to that, I can't pay any more versus how much more do I have to pay for you not to sign with Cornerstone? They know if you run a well-run process, like what our Assurance 360 process is, you are going to get higher value. It's black and white. Again, if you had a house, I always use the analogy, if you found your dream house and you're the buyer now, put your buyer hat on, you look at this dream house and your realtor calls you up and says, hey, I think I got a house for you and it's in the school district you want. It's the perfect square footage and lot and size in town. Everything's perfect. And you go, hey, it's Wednesday, I'm busy at work. Can I go on Saturday, Sunday and go look at it with my spouse? Well, okay, let me call the realtor. Yeah, you know what? It's been on the market for 110 days. No one's put an offer in for whatever reason. Saturday, Sunday, I don't care. Show up whenever you want. There's nobody interested. And you go there, you love it, and you put an offer in. If it's listed at $1 million, you're not putting in at $1 million because you're the only buyer at the table. It's been on the market for 110 days, and there's zero pressure. There's no promo. Now, same scenario, you get a call from that same realtor on a Wednesday. Hey, there's a house here. I think it's everything that you're looking for. It's listed at $1 million. Oh, can I go on Saturday? I'm kind of busy. Saturday, there's already 5 showings on Thursday, and all the offers are due on Friday at noon. I've got you the 6th slot. So you go there, you look at it, it's like, oh my gosh, yep, somebody's coming out. You go in, it's amazing, you love it. And as you're going out, the 7th person's going in. What value are you going to put on that? Well, now you might go above ask price. If you really want it, you got to, before I was at maybe $850, now I'm at $1,050,000 or maybe more. And then the last scenario that I usually talk about is now that seventh group walking in, that seventh family walking in, it's just one of those families that you just can't stand. Their kids bully your kid, or they're a know-it-all, or they just, whatever it is that just grinds you. And they kind of wink when they go by, like, get the hell out of my house. This is my house. You can't afford it. I'll pay more than you. And you're like, I'll show them, and you're going to pay more. And that's kind of what buyers do when it's a defensive position. Like, oh man, we want to buy it. We'll pay this. But if our competitor gets it, we can't let that happen, much like the scenario I talked about before. So we got to pay up even more to not only grow, but also to protect what we have. And you probably pay 3 different prices for that exact same house with the exact same square footage, exact same lot size. And that's the power of POMO. That's the power of multiple offers. That's what we do with business owners while keeping everything confidential. There's never a reason that your employees, your competitors, your customers should ever know that your business is for sale. And at the end of the day, the owners get to choose who's the best fit for them. And that's why we absolutely are so passionate and love what we get to do, because we get to help that business owner with the single largest financial transaction of their life, and help them get them to give them both time and money to do all the cool things that they want to do in the next best chapter, versus just some kind of transaction where, yep, I sold it, but the culture sucks. I probably left money on the table. My employees are quitting or getting fired. And that's just not fun. We want to make it not just a transaction, but a transformation for you, your family, and your employees in your business.
Scott, I have like 35 more questions for you, but I'm going to wrap it up with this one because I think it really shows kind of what you just talked about, and the value of working with an M&A advisor is, like you said before, typically the business owner, this is their one chance, right, to sell their company. Probably have never done it before. You go up against a buyer who's sold bought hundreds of businesses. The scales are definitely tipped one way in that scenario. And I think us as an advisory industry can level that out. Why don't you quickly explain that?
Yeah, I think it goes back to that POMO again. Is yes, these buyers, they know all the tricks. They know what to say, what not to say. I mean, I just moderated a panel of 4 private equity firms. On an average, they looked at 3,000 to 5,000 deals per year, 3,000 to 5,000 per year, and bought 5 to 12 companies a year. So think about that. 3,000 to 5,000, they buy 5 to 12 companies is what that sample size of 4 panels. So they're looking through stuff. Low offer, nope, next. Low offer, nope, next. Oh, I got one that's interested, because they don't know what their value is. They're not represented. That's where they get excited. In fact, it never really clicked until I did this survey that so many private equity firms are looking for founder-led companies, founder-owned companies that have never sold before, because they have no idea what to expect, and they're just going to at some point, they're going to get beat up, whether it's right away, or they're going to get told some crazy number, only to watch it go down in diligence lower and lower and lower until they get to the number that they knew they're going to be at eventually. And sometimes that happens over weeks. Sometimes it takes months. Sometimes it's a year or two. So it's all about, the only way you can switch the power from the buyer having all the power to the seller is by getting those multiple offers. Once you have multiple offers, now they know they're competing. There's no asking price. And now they've got to put their best foot forward if they really want something. So it's creating that urgency and that scarcity that you can only do with multiple offers. And the M&A advisor, the investment maker, controlling the timing of things. We don't let the buyers drag things out. The buyers either move with our time frames or they lose the deal. And that's where you'll find if they're serious about it. Oh, I can't make that. I can't move that fast. Well, then they're not that interested, because buyers can move very quickly if they have to, if they really need to. Like I said, in that deal where they really wanted to get it done, we had a signed letter of intent in 10 days. We closed in 42 days with Thanksgiving and Christmas. And we've done one deal. My best deal was where the buyer had to get it done due to a big tax bill that they were going to pay if they didn't invest in something. And we got a letter of intent signed, and we closed 3.5 days later on a deal, because they had to get done by the end of June. So it can get done. The typical time frame from LOI to close is 60, 90 days, but it can get done a lot faster than that. If everybody's on board and really working towards.
And so I think to get the power of multiple offers, that's why you invest in an M&A advisory firm, an investment bank. So they level the playing field. These buyers have done many deals. We've done many deals. So let's make it a fair fight, and we'll get you, better structure, more options.
Yeah, I think exactly. Again, the buyer has all the knowledge. The seller has no knowledge for the most part. By bringing an investment bank in, now you at least have knowledge on knowledge. We can educate the business owner. But the way we get where the business owner has all the power is where you get those multiple offers. That's where POMO comes in. And that's what CIA is all about. That's what Cornerstone's all about, is bringing the best teams together to help the business owner maximize, again, they're typically their largest asset, and help them move on to the next chapter of their life. And it's a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah. Scott, thank you so much. This has been amazing. A lot of great information that I think not only the business owner, but the M&A advisor, the investment banker will find very valuable, that they can talk to when pitching clients and understand, where they're coming from, the seller and the business owner on their side. So really appreciate you joining here today. Where can our listeners maybe find, the white paper that you created, or maybe more information about all this?
Yeah, if you can, I don't know if you can put a link in there. Otherwise, if you go to Cornerstone's website, which is www.cornerstone-business.com or cornerstone-business.com, and then you'll see across the top, I think one of them is research. If you click on research, it'll drop down and it'll have some of the white papers for business owners, for financial advisors. There's another one about POMO and a lot of good information there, all good educational content. Like I said, we didn't create the survey. We helped create the questions, but a third-party professional did it, and they did an amazing job. CKG did that for us, and we just want to try to, again, educate business owners and their advisors to help this percentage of 20, 30% flip around and be 70, 80%, of companies that want to sell and get to live their next best chapter. So that's what our mission is to continue to create impact for all the lives that we touch.
There are a lot of great resources on Scott's website. If you want to connect with them, you can fill out a form, do it there, get a chance to, talk to the team here and understand where they're at, or, where you're at and how they can help you out and what your options are. But yeah, it's cornerstone-business.com. I'll put the link to all the resources in the show notes, so be sure to check that out and get connected with Scott and his team.
Yeah, give us a call. Love to, again, free, no costs. It's confidential. And if we're not the right fit, that's why we love our alliance of, 35 other firms, over 200 investment bankers all over the world, that we can put you in touch with the right person and the right group that can really take good care of you.
Scott, again, thank you so much for your time. This has been a lot of great information, and really appreciate you offering that up to our listeners. Make sure to like, share, and comment on this website. Pass this episode on to anybody who you think would benefit from our conversation. Maybe you have a business owner friend, or, and so they can make a well-informed decision on what to do when they are ready to sell. And be sure to tune in every Thursday morning for a brand new episode each week. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the M&A Mastermind podcast, and a special thank you to our presenting sponsor, Cornerstone International Alliance. If you enjoyed today's discussion, don't forget to like, share, and comment. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. We'll be back next week with more insights, strategies, and real-life experiences to help you take your M&A game to the next level.